The tabulation process is actually a shared process.
A lot of people are asking, well, why is Maricopa County taking so long?
So basically what you're saying, Scott, is that there's a lot of checks and balances.
I don't know. We were long-winded. I think we should do it again. No.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to our episode 5 of our monthly video series, Election Connection. I am Scott Jarrett.
And I'm Ray Valenzuela. We are your elections directors for Maricopa County. Each month, we'll have a new episode of Election Connection,
where we answer questions from you, our viewers. And today, we're going to be answering questions related to our election reporting, as we report on election night and those days after. So I believe the first question is from a viewer that I have for you, Ray. And that question is, when does the elections department begin counting ballots?
Well, that's another great question. It's apropos since we're in the closing out the primary election, but a bit of factual information for our viewers. The tabulation process is actually a shared process between the recorder, who I report to, and the Board of Supervisors, who Scott serves under. So either of us could answer this question, but I'll probably answer it better. So I'll go ahead and take that on, mostly because Scott just wants me to answer the question.
Well, 30 years of experience, you have a lot of institutional knowledge that you can provide our viewers.
Yeah, but I'm going to give the quick answer because there's a lot of details, but first and foremost is that we can begin tabulating or counting once our logic and accuracy test is completed. That's first and foremost. We can provide other details on the logic and accuracy in another election connection, but what it is the quick of it is we test our tabulation machines by running pre-marked ballots through that are with results that are not known to us, done by the Secretary of State. And it basically allows us to say, are the machines counting correctly? Did the results come out? And that is done with political party observers present and part of the process. So again, a logic and accuracy test where we test the machines, lock them down, get the fingerprint of the code, if you will, and then we come back and check it. But so first and foremost, logic and accuracy has to be done. Then there's a new statute that allows us to begin as soon as that is done. So if we do that ahead of the beginning of early voting, which is 27 days prior, always 27 days prior, we could actually begin tabulating on that start of early voting. Now, with that said, that's when we first mail ballots, so we likely wouldn't have ballots back, but we do, and under Scott Jarrett, in-person early voting is happening, so we could have those. But logic and accuracy, and the other thing is after enough ballots have come in, so possibly 3, 4, maybe a week after that start, is when it's more logistically relevant to actually begin that tabulation process. And the other thing, obviously, is when we talk, and I just want to touch a little bit real quick, is when early ballots come back, obviously, and I think, we'll cover this in other parts of this process, we actually have to do signature verification on those. A lot of people already seen that in our updates and just the facts. 100% of those have to be signature verified. 100% then that are valid to be counted go to a citizen board processing team made up of bipartisan board members, a dam and a rep, if you will, and they then ready those, audit those, and then ready them for tabulation. Then, of course, we have to tabulate. So just want to let you know that those are two things, logic and accuracy, when ballots are received, and then when ballots are received doesn't mean they go straight to tabulation. They have to go through that signature verification, bipartisan board processing, then tabulation itself.
Well, thank you, Ray. You mentioned a new statute or new law, right? And that's a recognition that everyone knows that voters and the public, the media, they're all eagerly awaiting those results to be posted. And one of the things that Arizona has done is they've allowed us to start tabulating those ballots earlier. So as you mentioned, upon receipt, as long as we've completed that logic and accuracy test, and that's just been a progression. In 2020, it was 14 days before the election day. 2018, it was 7. Now we can have them as long as we have those ballots in hand and our system and tabulation equipment have been tested. So
sure.
Thanks, Ray.
Sure. And Scott, I have the next question for you, and it's almost segues right off perfectly. Why does it take time to post election results?
Well, and part of this is always a balance of providing accessible voting options for voters, as well as making sure that we have the integrity of the process, as well as then trying to get through them quickly so we can release those results to voters. So let's first start with when we first post on election night, and that's 8 p.m. And the reason why it's 8 p.m. is because they want to make sure that every voter's had that opportunity to finish that voting in person, right? You can think about if you're voting in person, there's lots of voters that will arrive right at the voting location, right towards the very end. They can start standing in line right at 7 p.m. Some of those voting locations might have 5-10 minute wait time. It could take 15-20 minutes for a voter to vote those ballots. So then we post those results at 8 p.m. and those are our early ballots. Everything that we've received through the weekend, really pretty much through that Saturday or Sunday, that then, as Ray had mentioned, has to go through a 100% human verification process of that signature. So we've been able to do that through those ballots that we received through the weekend and reported those. For this August primary, we reported over 600,000 ballots in that very first post, which is nearly a record. In 2020, we only exceeded that by a little bit. And in most other elections previous to that, we've never even had 600,000 ballots cast in an August primary. So that's another piece of information out there. A lot of people are asking, well, why is Maricopa County taking so long? We're actually been doing it faster and faster every single year. So when we posted those final results on election night, right? So we post at 8 p.m., then we'll make several other posts throughout the evening. Those are all coming from our voting location, those in-person voters, those election day results. You think about Maricopa County, we're larger than 7 states. We are the second largest voting jurisdiction in the country. So it does take a while for those poll workers to be able to pack up those voting locations, get those ballots in bipartisan teams delivered to our receiving sites. Those receiving sites, then we have them trucked in, and they're accompanied by sheriff's deputies that make sure that those ballots are secure. We then go through and we make sure that we do audits to verify that the chain of custody was maintained before we start reporting those results. And we posted results at the very end of election night, the second fastest that we've ever done. I think the only time that we were slightly quicker, which was right at like 12:04 a.m. and we posted at 12:30 for the August primary, was in 2012 when we are transmitting results from our different receiving sites over an analog line. We no longer do that. We do that right from our secure BTC center, our tabulation center. But then once we receive those ballots, our staff the very next day starts doing signature verification on any early ballots that were dropped off on election day. So for the August primary, we had 15% of the voters drop their ballots off on election day. That was 122,000 ballots. We were able to do signature verification on about 60,000 a day. And so we completed that within a couple days. And that's a manual human process that's verifying 100% of those signatures. And to do that accurately and do it with integrity, it does take a few days. But by the time we reached that Friday evening, when we made our third post of our early ballots, we had almost 99% of those ballots included. It's 98.5% of ballots reported and released to the public. And then we have also a 5-day curing period that's allowed for by state law. That is if we question a voter's signature when we were doing our signature review. If a voter showed up to vote in person on election day and they did not have the right ID, they were issued a conditional provisional. They have 5 days to come show us that their ID, so their ballot can be counted. So we have that 5-day period, and we say it's 5 days. That's 5 business days. It's really 7 full calendar days for a voter to be able to cure that. And then we do those post-election audits. Some of those are auditing the chain of custody on election night, but we also then have our hand count audits. Those are the political parties. They have appointees that will come in and do a random sample and take a small percentage of the ballots to make sure that they are reflective and accurately reporting the results from their hand count that match the tabulation equipment. So all of those need to be done before we can finalize those results and then present it to the Board of Supervisors for their certification.
So basically what you're saying, Scott, is that there's a lot of checks and balances. There's integrity in the process, but to have that integrity, we need to make sure we follow those process and procedures. One of the things, like I want to echo the fact that a lot of folks are saying, well, how do we make this faster? Well, Arizona has been one of the more voter-centric states with as far as its statutes, like that curing period. 122,000 ballots well, we say let's just not do that, and let's not allow somebody to drop off a ballot. I just want to point out that that's 122,000, substantial amount, but we got to let those process and procedures, signature verification, again, the processing boards doing the audit, bipartisan boards, and the tabulation with political observers there. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the hand count. And we just finished the hand count, depending on when you're watching this, but it does basically indicate that the results that were provided through that random sampling validate the machine count. So, you know, it is a big process to undertake, and why it takes time. Well, I just want to say, I think that's all our questions we have. So I'll say thank you for tuning in.
And please remember to subscribe to our Just the Facts newsletter, where you can submit questions and we'll answer those. And we'll see you next month.
Bye-bye now.